Hi everyone, it's Leanne Antoine here, gracing you all on this wonderful International Women's Day 2022. I won't be talking about International Women's Day for the entire show. I'm sure that everyone is hearing and feeling the vibes immensely through social media platforms. And just before I bring my guest on this afternoon, I did want to draw a little bit on International Women's Day, just in terms of what's happening in Ukraine at the moment and some of the celebrations around women fighting to take care of their families, fighting to survive. And I know that there's been some talk about women actually having firearms in those situations and defending their cubs, their children. And for me, I felt like it was so moving and so empowering that it would be difficult for me not to mention that today. So yes, a happy International Women's Day to all the women all over the world. But for some, it's not necessarily happy. It is just International Women's Day. And I want to celebrate. I want to, to really just embrace the day for all women, wherever they are all over the world. We must remember, particularly in war type settings, and this was brought to my attention a couple of days ago about kidnappings of women in war settings, and it just really made me put things into context as a free woman on this planet at this moment in time. Moving on from that a little bit was also the fact that I have seen lots of families from the Ukraine taking their animals with them to get out of this war zone. And that ties in quite nicely with my guest this afternoon. And what I want to say about that, just in brief, is that loads of us understand the phrase "a man and his dog," and we understand how much energy and well-being these often furry animals, bring to our homes and our lives. We had lots of people buying animals through the pandemic. And when I saw on the TV kids and families taking their animals with them, I thought actually so many people consider their animals to be a part of their family. And I wonder how much of a difference those animals, those pets, are making to the lives of those people today. So without further ado, I'm bringing through from the studio Kim Sheader, who is head of Physiotherapy and Rehabilitation at the Ralph Centre. And she's also a member of ACPAT, the Association of Chartered Physiotherapists for Animal Physiotherapists. Without further ado, here she is.
Hello.
Hi, Kim. Thanks for joining.
My pleasure.
I don't think we can start without wishing you a happy birthday. So I am out there. We hope you have a wonderful day. That's from all of the team here at the Physiotherapy Matters podcast. And thanks for joining us at what's actually been quite short notice. I wonder, would you mind just introducing yourself to the audience, telling them a little bit about you, about what you do and your work, and then let's take it from there.
Yeah. So as you said, I'm the head of physio and rehab at the Ralph Veterinary Referral Centre, which is a small animal specialist referral centre in Marlow. So it's basically the human equivalent would be a hospital, essentially. We've got consultant level vets who have all specialities. We have an MRI scanner, we have a CT scanner, we have three theatre rooms, we have operating theatres, we have everything essentially that you would get in a normal hospital, and all of the departments that you would also think of. About me, I have been a chartered physio for coming up 22 years now. I did 10 years in the NHS before, where I actually specialised in respiratory physio. Okay. Rather than anything else. Loved a bit of ICU. Had a unusual relationship with phlegm in that I really enjoyed it. But anyway, and yeah, then from one thing and another, I just decided that I needed a bit of a change. I ended up redoing the postgrad diploma, which was at the Royal Veterinary College at that point in time, and joined ACPAT. And I have been animal physio pretty much full time for the last 10 years. And then in the last 5 or 6 years, I've specialised entirely in small animals. So I used to treat horses, but I'm too short and I like being indoors.
I hear you. I would be with that. I'm not sure that I share quite the love for animals. I could work on them every day, but I do get the indoors thing. Can you tell me what was the impact of the pandemic on your work as an animal physio? Can you give us a little bit of insight? Because I know what it's been like for me as an MSK physio. What was it like for you?
So it was quite a shock. It was a very different way of having to do everything. To start off, for the first lockdown, we were only seeing urgent and cases because that was what was deemed safest, basically. So although a lot of ACPAT physios actually ceased working completely initially, because a lot of their so the average ACPAT, a lot of ACPAT animal physios actually do home visits rather than are based in a hospital or anywhere like that. Obviously, because I was in a hospital, we have an ICU and we have an emergency department, so we're open 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. We were still getting urgent and emergency cases. So I actually was lucky enough to not stop working at all. But you had to have a very different way of working. So all the pet carers are excluded from the hospital, and they still are currently, because we're a new hospital we have about 200 staff, but in the grand scheme of things, with shifts, etc., that isn't that many people. So we still need to safeguard ourselves, etc. So we're had to get used to working differently, not having the carer there to talk to constantly and sort of get feedback from, doing your initial your subjective assessments over the phone, or things like that. But we got there and it's working.
And when I was introducing the show, I brushed on, animals, people moving out of the Ukraine, but taking their animals with them. And I wondered like what your thoughts were on that, because the default for everyone is to think about the people, like, naturally. But obviously, and today we heard that a school with deaf children had been bombed, but we're not default, so we've got the people, we're then thinking about the children, the sort of vulnerable people, and then you've got the animals. What part do you think the animals are playing in all of this right now, Kim? Like, how important are these animals? It's not just, we've got well-being and etc., and we're thinking about that in a bigger context here, us taking our dogs out for walks, for example, being in nature and embracing that. What do you think? I don't know if you can even picture this or put it into words in context of what might be going on here.
I can't even imagine that situation, and hopefully I never have to. But the level of emotional support and well-being that your pet can give to you is phenomenal. I've seen, you do see carers who have lost one of their animals, and they are grieving just like you would grieve if you lost a human that you cared much about. And it has to be similar in the Ukraine. They're part of your family for a lot of whether that be cats, dogs, or anything in, guinea pigs, anything in between. And they can give us a level of emotional support that they don't even realize that they're giving. So I think they're vital, personally.
Yeah, no, incredible. Thank you. Talk to us a little bit more, if you don't mind, about ACPAT, because I think I've been aware of ACPAT for a long time. I worked with a couple of people who did did do the postgrad diploma, so I was always aware of it, but I never knew that many, and lots of people didn't stay working in it either. And I don't know whether that's because, as you said, lots of people have to do treatments in homes as opposed to maybe the visibility in hospitals. So there's an impact there in terms of your freelancing or you're working self-employed, and maybe that doesn't work out for everyone. Can you explore ACPAT a little bit more for us? Tell everybody a bit more about the network.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great association. I was chair of it for 4 years myself, so I'm going to be biased, but we have so we've currently got 2 postgrad courses, one based at the University of Liverpool, one based at the University of Hartpury. They're both part-time master's degree courses where you can you do your postgraduate diploma, and then you can choose to continue on to do the element to do the masters, basically. We have, and these are courses that are internationally renowned. We have people coming from all across the chartered or qualified physios, chartered physios, human physios that are coming from all across the world to join and do those courses. We then have lots of members who some are purely equine based, some are purely small animal based, large majority treat both, and other people will there are lots of members that treat farm animals, will treat exotics. So there's nothing and no one that we can't treat in theory, basically. A lot of, I think, as you said, the retention wise, the biggest issue is that you pretty much are all self-employed, apart from the small lucky, well, it just depends on whether you think it's lucky or not, but the small few that are employed, because the nature of the job is that you're freelance and that you're self-employed. So that can be very, very hard, and you do find yourself forgetting that there's such thing as a work-life balance. I remember suddenly realizing that I was working 7 days a week, and maybe that shouldn't be a thing. But you initially you do whatever you can to get established. Lots of people do get, and we've got lots and lots of members. I think we're in the region of about 400 members now of ACPAT.
Do you see that the landscape of animal physios is changing in terms of that freelance and that employment? Like, has that changed over the time? And I ask you because you've been in the industry now for 20 odd years. Is that changing? Are there more opportunities for these physios to get employed work?
I think there are getting more and more opportunities. Yeah, as becomes a more mainstream part of the veterinary industry. So we about human physio being a relatively young profession, because we're sort of about 100 years old or so, aren't we? Whereas the ACPAT is I think about 40 to 50 years old. So we are talking really young. And in the veterinary world, it is very much there's still a lot of vets who don't know or understand what physio can do, or what we are, or what we do, or how we work, etc., etc. And a lot of them will be, it's just a bit of a massage, isn't it?
Yeah. And do you think that, because there's my understanding to some extent is that there's also been some difficulties with the fact that, for example, nurses will do courses and then they can do the work that you're doing. So the protection of your title and the way that this has evolved over time has been something that you as a network of physios have been, exploring and trying to evolve. Is that right?
Yeah, so there's absolutely no protection of title of veterinary physio or animal physio. The HCPC state on their website, and it's all come from them, that while physiotherapist, physical therapist is a protected title, as soon as fix of animal or veterinary in front, you are no longer attempting to deceive the public, I believe is their phrase. So therefore, there's no protection of title. So yeah, that does make life difficult, because it gave everyone an opportunity for there to be many different vet physio courses out there, some of which are of good quality and good standards, some of which are, I mean, I found one on Groupon the other day. Don't get me started. So it's incredibly frustrating and very saddening. And that's why, ACPAT we do work hard to try and promote get a chartered physio. I think the other thing to say is that because we're chartered physios, I personally feel that my palpatory skills are better because I learn on a verbal mammal rather than one that just cries or scratches or tries to bite me. Being able to be told, getting the feedback of, if I put my thumb in this trigger point, I get a sharp, quick pain, or a dull burning pain, I think is very relevant. And then because you can put together the physical reaction of the human with their verbal feedback, and those physical reactions you can still see in dogs and cats, so you can make a decent guess as to what they're feeling when you're feeling things, which I don't think I could have done without being human chartered physio first. I would also say that because of my chartered skills, I was a respiratory specialist. The veterinary physio courses mainly teach neurology and MSK. They don't really teach any of the other areas of physio. So I feel that I have further scope than a lot of other people potentially. I ICU, I treat ventilated patients still, I treat aspiration pneumonias, and I still love my respiratory stuff, and I still want to get involved and do the respiratory stuff. So I think there's a lot to be said for making sure that people choose an ACPAT physio, because we potentially have a better scope.
And I think there's still this difficulty maybe that even humans are struggling to understand exactly what physios do for humans. So our approach to the general public, also for them, not thinking that we're just massage, even though yes, we will do manual therapy, which a component of that can be massage. So when you're thinking that there's this struggle at that level, there ultimately is going to be a struggle when you're talking about relating this to your animal. So the visibility is something that may well need to be increased. I also think that when you're talking to a vet, and I'm talking about professional to professional now, is that there must be something in the standing in terms of your work with humans, your experience and exposure then to do further study to work with animals, and then actually being someone who's going to follow the guidelines of what it is to be chartered, regardless of whether, because there are some people, well, we're chartered, so what does it mean? But we are held to account as a result of that status. And I think that when you're selling yourself, particularly if you are self-employed or freelance or whatever it is, being able to draw in on that and to raise that as part of your, whether it's your application process or your interview process, ultimately gives you the strength above another candidate who may not necessarily have the same. Not always so, right? You could have somebody who hasn't done the human course at all. And I read on your bio that some people, you don't have to do human physio to go into animal physio, but we understand that scope of practice is so important. The other thing that you and I also drew on, very briefly off air, was removing the psychology. And I was saying that as an MSK physio myself, I spend a lot of time unpicking the psychology for patients in terms of, the pain that they have. Whether that's because they've taken a considerable length of time to then come to me, they've got lots of secondary compensations. Whereas I think, particularly in the animal world, and we had a family dog, unfortunately we lost him in the first lockdown, but in that instance, the moment we see something's wrong with our animal, we're like, right, straight away, nobody leaves anything. Oh, I thought it would, in 2 weeks' time, I just thought it would settle down. I thought it would generally, oh, my dog's not eating, he didn't eat his dinner today. He misses one meal and instantly there's this concern. So we don't even get to the point. Obviously, we can't ask them psychologically what they're thinking or feeling, but for you immediately hone in on this injury, this dysfunction, without having to deal with, in the same way, the psychology. There's got to be something about that, right, Kim?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So it's interesting in sort of two different ways. Firstly, psychology of the human, you're looking at, as you said, immediately things get picked up, and it's very similar, I feel, to pediatrics in that respect. It's still their baby, they just happen to have 4 legs and fur rather than be a human. And in a similar and in that same vein, it's amazing how good the pet carers are at doing their dogs' exercises,
As opposed to doing
where
your
those
own,
same
Kim.
it's brilliant. It's so funny because that they're doing their exercises, whereas that same human, you'd be like, yeah, there's no way you'd have done your exercises until like once the night before you come back and see me again, because you can tell, can't you? Bless them.
Whereas some of that has something to do with, and sorry to cut you there,
no,
we're so good, as I say, as people, and despite some of the stuff going on in our world, but we're so good at taking care of other people all the
absolutely.
time. I will make sure I won't necessarily press out all of my bed sheets, my bed linens, but the minute I've got a guest, that is shit, I'm going to iron that through. I want every corner to be but for me, I'm like, it will do.
That'll do.
So instantly, like that neglect of self is just so automatic, right?
Absolutely. And that is exactly what it is. It's like, oh, I haven't got time to do everything, so I'll forget about myself, but I'll make sure I look after my animal, my child, my friend, etc., etc. And then the other thing, talking about psychology, is the psychology of the animal, because it's so much more basic in this. So you don't have, yes, we have patients with chronic pain. We've proven that we still get centralization of pain in dogs, and cats with chronic conditions, but we don't have, but they hate their job, or they're in a relationship that they don't want to be in a relationship with anymore. So you can do the physio, and the techniques really work really effectively in a way that, you have to say, when I first started doing the animal physio, really surprised me how effective physio was. It was really fascinating and really, really refreshing to see, because I'd gotten a little bit to a stage with my human work of, does it actually work? If we just leave them to rest for a couple of weeks, will it all just get better? That kind of thing. And it was like, oh, no, I take it back. I do have a reason for a job, and I do have techniques that work. And this is amazing.
I wonder, because I'm a big fan of Eckhart Tolle, and he talks a lot about ego and self and personal development and reflection, etc. And I wonder how much, as I'm talking to you and you're talking about the animal and the simplicity of their needs, that is the complexity of our needs and the ego and the I need to be able to do X, Y, Z, complicating the clinical presentation. We know that it is, but I wonder how much of that is being made more complex on top of what might actually be a simple, relatively simple injury. It's just, I wonder do you know what I mean? And that's of interest to me. But I also think there's so much around, this is contact. When you're treating your animals, it's contact, that reassurance, like you said, that security. And actually, when you do something for that animal and it feels better, suddenly you're all right. I'm not frightened of you anymore. In fact, you can do that to me again.
I get the greetings I get from my patients are the best things ever. Seriously, I've got some chronic pain, chronic OA patients, and that I used to do home visits, and they literally used to greet me at the door, treat me like I was the best thing since sliced bread, and then literally go and adopt the position that was the treatment position. And you'd be like, and they'd then just look at me and say, come on, get on
Yeah,
with
you're
it.
gonna
I
get
like this.
sorted.
I feel really
Yeah,
good after this.
yeah, I
So
love it.
yeah. And it was, and they, you know, you'd think, oh, they won't remember me because I haven't seen them in like 3 months, some of them, not all of them, but some of them. They would still greet me like I was absolutely the best human in the world. And it's
I love
so
that.
lovely to see. It's
That's
brilliant.
so good, isn't it? I mean, if we have a chronic pain patient that comes in our door, generally they're not coming with the same smile and enthusiasm. It's
No.
they've turned up, but we're going to discuss this, what's happened in that last week, last few days. And
Yeah.
yes, they might feel great when they leave, but we as the therapists have had to spend the time bringing them up to that
Yeah.
point of
Yeah.
goodness before we let them go. Whereas your
Yeah.
animals are reflective of those past experiences, and they want to know how we can create more.
Yeah.
And I just, something about that is so wholesome, because it must be, I think that my job is
Yeah.
rewarding as a human physiotherapist. This must be extremely rewarding for you, doing what
Oh,
you.
it's fantastic. It's absolutely fantastic. Getting dogs back to walking again, getting not just dogs, all animals, but because about 80% of my caseload is dogs, I tend to default to just calling all animals dogs. So bear with me. Um, but getting them walking again, because I see a lot of paralyzed dogs post intervertebral disc disease. So they have hemilaminectomies under by the neurologist, and they can be completely plegic, and we can get them walking again because there's a fabulous change. It's slight different in their physiology that they recover so much better from spinal cord injuries, and just giving them back quality of life. And that works for them as well as it works for your old creaky arthritics and everything else in between. It's just the best. It really is. And they're just grateful.
Yeah, listen, gratitude is the word of the moment. Kim, I want to say thank you so much for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I do let everybody know, this show that I host every second Tuesday of the month is about shining light on some brilliant people who are doing some brilliant work in our field, in our physiotherapy field. And I also think it's an amazing reference point to find out some things that are happening in our community as physios that people have no idea that it's even occurring. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for joining me. We wish you a happy birthday from all of us at the Physiotherapy Matters podcast. And
Thank you.
I might have you back on to hear what else you've been up to as we
I'd
come
love
out
to.
of the pandemic. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, thank you so much for listening to One and All. I am always blessed to be able to shine some light on the work of the physiotherapists that work in the industry, and I hope to be doing it a lot more over the coming months. If you or someone you know is doing some great work in your field and you think that they should come and join me, please ask them to reach out to me, Leanne at distinctphysiotherapy.com. If they're a bit shy, maybe you can speak on their behalf, but I'll do my best to make you feel nice and comfortable. On that note, once again, happy International Women's Day, and I would just like to wish you all the very best for yet another International Women's Day, and have a wonderful, wonderful rest of week. Take care. This gets me every single time. Oh dear.